Welcome to Reading Cancer Together, because why should I read it by myself? I will translate what is on the screen right now, but it really hits home because I am the first to criticize the schooling system. Because you don't learn how to start a business at school, you don't learn how to do your taxes, you don't learn how to do a resume, but you do learn Latin, and you do learn about hyper complex numbers and stuff like that. So yeah, sure, we can have a conversation about how to improve the schooling system. But unfortunately, I guess progressive people have a different idea. So this is a meme, I suppose, on what is being taught in schools and what this person would like for the school to teach them. So let's look at it. The first one is how to write properly. I mean, this is good, right? Like, you kind of need to learn how to write. I guess the world does evolve around the keyboard nowadays, and you might make the argument that maybe one day writing the way we know it is going to be obsolete. But until that day comes, yes, I think you need to learn how to write in school. About history, yeah, I think that's kind of important, like learning at least the basic history of your nation. And yeah, it's good knowledge to have. How to comment on a work of literature. This is a little bit meh. I mean, this is a little bit in the meh territory, commenting on words of literature. It's meh. I mean, have you ever used it in your life? Don't get me wrong, like if someone is passionate about it, do you need to go to school in order to learn it? Probably not. I do agree this is kind of meh. Latin, again, meh. Like, why do you need to learn a dead language? You can do it on your own time, you know? Like, there are these people that think that unless the school teaches, people cannot learn. Like, schooling is the only way for people to learn things. It should be the way for people to learn the most essential things. Like the basic education. Like, if you don't know that shit, then you should be in trouble. Like, for example, not knowing how to read or write. Like, I mean, duh, like, people are going to look at you weird. Not knowing the very basics of history of your own country. Like, yeah, okay, like, those are essentials. Those should be in school. But, like, Latin, really? How to memorize and then explain what you memorize. This is actually a very useful skill. You can't do university without it. A lot of time in your life, you need to memorize things and then tell other people what you memorize. So, no, it's not really bad that the school focuses on this. So this is like what the school teaches. And let's see what the school is supposed to teach, according to a progressive. Time management. I mean, they don't really teach time management, but what's interesting is that you actually get to teach yourself time management when you're at school, because you have like all these different homeworks and you have all these different things to do. So you properly need to learn how to manage your time. So just because something isn't expressly being taught doesn't mean that you don't learn it. Yeah, like when I went to school, I learned time management. I don't need an expert to come with a pie chart in front of me and make me memorize the thing and then reproduce it to learn it. Like, you can learn things by doing. And I think like when you're at school, you definitely do learn about time management. This is like the dumbest one of all, sexual education. So for thousands of years, people know how to fuck, but now you need the expert to come in front of you with the pie chart to teach you how to fuck. Like, seriously. I never understand this fascination. It's like, let's teach sexual education in school, because otherwise, how are people supposed to know it? How are people supposed to figure it out? Like, unless you teach it in schools, it's like, okay, this person doesn't know how to fuck. Oh, he probably never went to school, did he? Like, whenever you come up with something new, like for example, let's say you want sex education to be taught in school. Okay, now you're paying another chucklehead, which is a professor of sexual education. Like, I go to work, I sweat, I put my blood into my work, hard, difficult labor in front of this microphone. And the government takes away my money by force. They reach into my pocket and they take my money. And instead of giving it to starving children, it gives it to some pervert to go into schools to teach kids about sexual education. Why can't their parents do that? Why can't they learn it from the internet, okay? Go to the Big Dragon website or something. I don't know. But like, really, this is required, right? Like, unless the schools teaches, it doesn't exist. Okay. This is my favorite. You need to teach students about empathy. How the fuck do you teach empathy to someone? How do you teach an emotion? Like, do you get a mannequin, a doll or something, and then you start beating it with a baseball bat, and then you ask the students, how did you feel about it? How do you teach empathy, leftist? How? How is it that you're supposed to teach it upon other people? How do you grade people based on the empathy? Like, do you, again, like, get a baseball bat to a doll, and then you ask, how did you feel about it? And if they say, meh, okay, that's kind of a 6. How do you grade people on empathy? My God. Mental health and self-care. That's a little bit vague, isn't it? Like, what exactly do you want to know? I mean, there's an entire university you can go in order to learn these things. Mental health and self-care. And by the way, in 2022, did you notice something? Like, almost everything is a diagnostic. Like, even imposter syndrome. So basically, imposter syndrome is something that came up in recent years. Like, it didn't exist up like 5 or 10 years ago, or if it did exist, no one talked about it. But it's basically like if you're at a job and you don't feel like you're good enough. Oh, that's imposter syndrome. I am willing to bet there is no human being on planet Earth that can take a visit to a psychologist and the psychologist is going to label him as healthy. Like, you don't have a single mental health issue. Now, do I think that mental health issues don't exist? No, obviously they do exist. And by the way, they're pretty nasty to have. I mean, it can be life-changing. So I do understand and I do empathize, even though I didn't learn in school about empathy. I do understand how it's like to have one. So it's bad. But you're getting to the point where almost everything is now a mental issue. So yeah, mental issues are important. People should seek help from them. I don't think you need to teach this in school. Again, like, there is a life outside of the school. I know it's shocking and mind-blowing for progressives who believe that unless something is forced, it doesn't exist. Like, unless people are being compelled, they don't do it. But like, trust me, people can figure out about mental health issue by Googling now. And finding an appointment with a psychologist. About relationship. Like, so you will go to school to learn about relationship? Like, don't you make relationships when you're at schools? Like, don't you talk with your fellow classmates? Don't you associate with them? Don't you make relations with your teachers? Like, do you need to be taught about how to interact with another human? Don't you do that before school? Like, didn't you learn about it from kindergarten? Like, what on earth are we talking about? Honestly, this is why I really dislike this type of ideology, that unless something is compelled, unless something is forced, it doesn't exist. Unless you have like a piece of paper that says that you've learned about this, and you had the pie chart and you memorized it, and then you told it to a teacher so you get a grade, then you don't know it. You've no idea about it unless it's being forced upon you. Am I the only one who's bothered by this? I do think it's really cringe, isn't it? It's kind of cringe. Like, imagine, how would that even work? Like, the teacher comes up and it's like, all right, we're going to learn about how to make friends. And how do you teach that, by the way? I mean, it's something that's pretty much innate. Like, you either know it or you don't. It's like teaching people how to have charisma. Sure, you can help them improve it a little bit, but like, I don't think you can get someone that's incredibly uncharismatic and make them into the most charismatic person. I don't think that can be done. How does the government function and why it's important to vote? Now, I actually learned this in school. I don't know if they don't teach it anymore, but we actually did have this entire class. It was called Civic Duty, Civic Studies. And we actually learned about the government, how the legislative functions. We learned about democracy, the importance of free speech. Yeah, this was good shit. Don't they teach it anymore? I mean, again, I'm asking the internet, but here in Romania, it was being taught. So because I see this here, it signals two things. Either they don't teach it anymore, or the person took this from an English website, translated it, and it doesn't apply to Romania. I'm more willing to go on the second. And by the way, like, this is just the thing, but there's also some points that I agree with. Like, for example, financial education. The left will never teach people financial education. Because the moment the people make the connection that whenever I get free shit, that means that I pay more taxes, the game is over. Like, most people aren't going to vote for more free shit. Because they're being like, okay, but like, I pay for it. I know how to handle my money a lot better than the government does. or then you can also ask the question. It's like, okay, the government wants more taxes, but the government already collects a lot of taxes. What the fuck does it do with that money that's already collecting? You know, like, okay, there's not enough money for free shit, we get that, but like, how are you spending the one that you already have? Then, giving first aid. Now, giving first aid, by the way, is not something that I'm against, but you kind of learn it whenever you want to get a driving license here in Romania. Like, it's actually mandatory for you to know how to give first aid if you want to drive a car. So just because it's not taught in school doesn't mean it's not taught in other places. But okay, fine, you know, I mean, this doesn't take a lot to teach someone how to give first aid. It takes like a couple of courses. And maybe you can have like other things, like for example, how to put out a fire. And I mean, this is good. I'm not against it. Professional orientation. I dare you. I dare you to tell people not to go to gender studies. I dare you to tell people to go to a trade school rather than a university. I dare you to do that. I don't think it's going to happen, but I agree. You know, like a lot of people should know. It's like, okay, you want to go to philosophy, right? You want to be a philosopher. All right, well, out of 100 people who go to the University of Philosophy, this is how many manage to actually get a job in the field. This is how much the university costs. This is how many people graduate. And from the graduates, this is how many actually manage to get a job in the field. I wholeheartedly agree with this. Like, this should actually be taught. It's a good thing. But they will not do it. Like, there is no way they're going to do it. No way, Jose. How to develop and express my own ideas. Don't you do that? Like, when you go to school, aren't they already doing that? Like, for example, here, when they ask you to comment on literary works, don't you express your own ideas when you do that? When you become the class president, this is why I have a problem with this. It's like human beings are robots, and you need to program them, and the only way to program them is through schooling. They have no parents, they have no friends, they have no life outside of school. There is nothing else but the school. That is the alpha and the omega of education. So yeah, this is why this annoyed me a little bit, and I wanted to present it to you guys. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.